I want to talk today about the NBN Business Plan announcement. There's actually been two announcements which have come out on consecutive days, and the second one, which was the whole of the business plan, is the one that's got all the media's attention. So that's probably the one that you've seen reported. And even then, they've only talked about a few bits and pieces, and of course the politicians, they've got a political angle on what's going on in there as well. But just a couple of key things to understand, particularly if you're in the business world of what's going on. Some interesting facts while we're talking about it. One of the things they said during the COVID environment, when everything was up high and all the data usage was through the roof, they had a peak download of 14.5 terabits per second. 14.5 terabits. Now that's just a huge number. To try and relate it down to something which is a bit understandable, if we took those 14.5 terabits and turned them into grains of salt, they'd make a line which would wrap around the earth 108 times. So that's how much information was downloaded in just 1 second. So there's a lot of information moving around Australia at that point in time. The other interesting thing is that apparently 45% of that was video. So video is by far the biggest single consumer of NBN. Now, onto the more interesting things. The key point about them releasing a business plan is, from their point of view, they've reached the end of the rollout. So we're now switching NBN from installation mode to development mode. They reckon they've done the job. Now that's not quite 100% true. If you look in the detail of their site, you say there are some things that still have to be done. There are some complex sites which are yet to be rolled out. In fact, we're involved directly in one of those complex sites. So we don't quite have NBN everywhere, but nonetheless, all of their main targets have been met to the point where they're switching away from construction and into the ongoing development mode. And that means they have a new focus now of upgrading. There's a component of their run out, which is called FTTN, fibre to the node, and they're going to be upgrading that. That was one of the early sections that they did, and that's the big one that you heard coming up on the news. They're talking about increasing the amount of fibre on there. The whole plan back in 2013 was for them to get the NBN out to as many people as quickly as they could. Now, 7 years doesn't sound quick, but compared to what it could have been, it actually is a lot quicker. They are now at the point, they've moved out of the rollout phase, that they can self-fund the updates, and their business model is working well enough that the banks and financial institutions are actually oversubscribing to give them the money they need to go for the next round. Now, over the next 3 years, they are planning to take from 20% up to 80% the number of premises which are able to connect to the top level tiers on there. And top level now is 100 megabits a second. In that time, it will be 1 gigabit or 1,000 megabits a second. So they're going to not only up the speed, but also the number of premises which are connected to it. As well, and very important, in fact more important from my point of view, is what they are rolling out is on the basis of what they know consumers want. Previously, back in 2013, they were guessing as to what they want. So they now have evidence, and they're going to be rolling out to meet that. So that is really important. And as I said, they're going to be targeting moving from 20% of the top tier at 100 megabits to 80% of the top tier, and changing that top tier to be 1 gigabit or 1,000 megabits. So that's really good news. Now, from a business point of view, the announcement on the day before they release the business plan is more important, because they have decided that they are going to create around Australia over the next 3 years 240 hubs in which the business fibre is rolled out to those particular areas, and a lot of them are going to be in suburbia or regional areas. So that will bring the highest business speeds to those areas. Now, the business NBN is different to the domestic NBN. So when you see the speeds on the business NBN and the domestic NBN, even though the numbers are the same, they do not compare, because on the domestic NBN, the download is greater than the upload, but in the business area, both of them are the same. And because businesses spend as much time putting information out as they do taking it in, that is much more valuable to them. They call that symmetric networking, when both the inbound and the outbound speeds are identical. And that is more practical for businesses because of the high volume of stuff being put out on there. But generally for domestic work, it's better to have a higher download rate and very little upload rate, because that's where the demand is. But those 240 hubs which are going to be put out means that out in the suburban areas, we're going to find these many business districts from an NBN point of view, which will be serviced by some very good NBN internet connections, and they'll be doing it at what they call level 2, which is a much more fundamental level and give you much more flexibility in what's going on. So look out for those NBN areas coming near you. There'll be 240 of them spread around the country, probably somewhere close to you. Anyway, that's it. And I'm still trying to figure out how we've got 108 times around the equator with all these salt crystals.